Let's talk about Azerite armor. This is a spicy one. So Azerite armor was in the middle of the borrowed power era, so through Legion all the way through Shadowlands. Poor thing was supposed to replace Legion legendaries, the Crucible system, artifact weapons, and tier bonuses. All went away at the exact same time. And the initial iteration of non-tradable, only one tier 1 Azerite trait, Azerite armor, was supposed to replace all of that. Was it Azerite armor's fault that relatively it felt so much worse because you lost all of that at one time? Not really, but it happened, right? Like, I mean, it definitely changes the way you interact with this item. So the question is this. So Azerite armor cannot go higher than a D. It was super non-interesting. There were some throughout the whole expansion that were really lame. It was never balanced well, even in all tiers. The tier 2 and tier 3 things weren't that good. The one good thing of Azerite armor that I liked is in every raid, they had a different tier 1 Azerite trait that was added. If you guys remember in the first one, it was Laser Matrix, and the other one that was better that just stacked up agi over time. In like one of them, it was like, it gave you like some secondary stats and movement and stuff. I actually liked that they did keep it fresh in that way, but overall it's really bad. So basically, let's ask ourselves this question. Did Azerite armor make the game worse or set it back in time? I think you could argue yes. They had artifact weapons and tier bonuses and legendaries, and after one expansion with Azerite armor, they went back and did 75% of that again after this was a kind of like a glowing failure. So if anything's going to be put into actively made the game worse, I would argue that the game actually was set back a few years by trying to do this instead of whatever they did. And I'll give another thing before leaving it here, just to kind of give my reasoning, is most things that were released in the Borrowed Power era were released at the beginning of the expansion, started out terrible, but at the end were made extremely good. I could name probably 4 or 5 things that I'll end up talking about later, so I'm not going to do it now, that were made better later in the expansion. Azerite armor got better in 8.1. I don't remember. It actually got better because they added the like second tier 1 Azerite trait to make it just more valuable. But also something that's not going to be on here is it cost like literally, and it reset after a certain amount of time, but it had like almost a gold cap to reset your Azerite armor to like respec it. And it never really felt like at the end of the expansion it found its stride. It was always bad. Residum isn't going to be on here, and Residum was a deeply flawed system. I think every minute they spent on Azerite armor was wasted, and it didn't actually translate into making the game better in the future, and they completely left it, and I think it was a failure. I'm going to put it as the first thing and actively made the game worse.